645 people died from heat in one American county in one summer. That was 2023 in Maricopa County, Arizona. The conditions that produced that record are now forecast to expand across most of the western and central United States over the next 10 days, with critical fire weather across the northern plains for several consecutive days. The same configuration that produced the second largest American wildfire in history. By the end of this video, you will understand the full forecast and what to watch for next. If you want the story when the planet shifts, hit subscribe. Code Red Studio covers earthquakes, severe weather, solar storms, volcanoes, and the science behind events that change the picture in real time. Drop a comment with where you're watching from and what you're seeing on the ground. And if this matters to you, share it. Your network is how this work reaches more people. Now, let's get into it. What you are looking at over the United States right now is a heat dome that is supposed to be ending. The peak was supposed to be Sunday and Monday over the deserts. Phoenix at 108 degrees on Monday. The Salton Sea at 112. Coachella Valley at 109. By Tuesday, the standard expectation is that the ridge weakens and the regime returns towards something closer to normal. That is not what the data is showing. The Weather Prediction Center's extended forecast discussion issued at 0734 UTC this morning describes a different trajectory. The western 500 millibar ridge is forecast to amplify, expand, and migrate east across the Rockies and onto the northern and central plains over the May 11th through May 17th window. The two coastal ridges of this past weekend are reorganizing into a single, larger, more persistent western ridge that will sit over the central United States by midweek. The signature data point of this transition is forecast for Wednesday, May 13th at Denver International Airport. The National Weather Service. Denver and Boulder office issued its area forecast discussion at 11:27 UTC this morning. Quote, some GEFS and ECMWF ensemble solutions do have 89 to 91 degrees Fahrenheit as the high temperature for KDEN on Wednesday. If we do get up to 90 degrees on Wednesday, that would tie our current high temperature record set in 1915. End quote. The Denver standing daily high temperature record for May 13th is 111 years old. It was set when Woodrow Wilson was halfway through his first term in office, before the United States had entered the First World War. Before commercial radio broadcasting existed, before women had the right to vote. The forecast envelope for Wednesday now overlaps that mark, and the multi-model agreement on the trajectory across the GEFS, the ECMWF, and the Canadian systems is high. The question this video answers is what it means when a record that has stood for 111 years is about to fall under a ridge that is supposed to be collapsing. The mechanical default for this kind of pattern is well understood. An omega block ridge, a ridge flanked by lows on both sides, shaped like the Greek letter omega, peaks, holds for a few days, the trough downstream fills, and the regime returns toward climatology within 7 to 10 days. This ridge is doing the opposite. The central trough is digging east. The eastern Caribbean ridge is weakening, and the western ridge is undergoing amplification and lateral expansion. The result is a single, larger ridge that progresses west to east across the next week. The mid-level thermal anomaly migrates with it. The mechanical drivers of the surface heat under the migrating ridge are the same physics that produce the weekend desert peak. Air sinks under the ridge core. Sinking air compresses adiabatically and warms about 5.5 degrees Fahrenheit per 1,000 feet of descent. Clear skies under the ridge maximize incoming solar radiation. Weak surface winds prevent horizontal heat transport. These are the same four mechanisms that produced 108 degrees in Phoenix. They are now being relocated to the Front Range, the Northern Plains, and the Central Plains. The Weather Prediction Center is explicit about what this means. From the extended forecast discussion this morning, quote, prefrontal warmth spreading into the central U.S. to also include some record-breaking high temperatures, end quote. The phrase record-breaking is operationally reserved language at WPC. They do not use it casually. The Plains anomaly forecast is 10 to 20 degrees above seasonal normal Monday through the following weekend per the NWS Denver office. That is the kind of departure that breaks records. Here is what the next 8 days look like. Today, Saturday, May 9th, the Western Ridge holds at 583 to 584 decameters over the desert southwest. The cold front trough between the two ridges is producing the Storm Prediction Center, slight risk severe weather corridor across western and central Oklahoma with isolated supercells, large to very large hail, and a tornado threat developing after sunset. Sunday, May 10th, Mother's Day, the Western Ridge intensifies to 586 decameters. Phoenix peaks at 106 degrees. Imperial County deserts forecast 105 to 112. The Storm Prediction Center has issued a Day 2 enhanced risk for west central and north central Texas with hailstones greater than 2 inches in diameter and severe wind gusts above 70 miles per hour. That is happening on Mother's Day across the Dallas, Fort Worth, and Abilene corridors. Monday, May 11th, the Western Ridge peaks at 588 decameters. Phoenix forecast high 108. The Denver Front Range goes under elevated to critical fire weather conditions. Relative humidity falling into the low teens, gusts 25 to 30 miles per hour. The Northern Plains enters the several days of critical fire weather window per NWS Bismarck. Tuesday, May 12th, the upper high pulls east into Arizona. Denver Heights begin building, and the migration is visible on the maps. The ridge is moving. Wednesday, May 13th, the mid-level thermal ridge is progged directly over Colorado. Denver International Airport forecast high 89 to 91. Standing record for the date, 90 degrees, set in 1915. Thursday and Friday, the ridge maintains over the central United States. The Weather Prediction Center forecasts record-breaking high temperatures for the central U.S. across this window. The Northern Plains continues under the critical fire weather regime. Saturday and Sunday, May 16th and 17th, and this is where the forecast becomes genuinely concerning. Long-range guidance shows the Western Ridge potentially strengthening further, with the western two-thirds of the lower 48 states under significant above-normal temperature anomalies. This is not a forecast that gets you back to normal by next Friday. It gets harder. I want to drill into the Denver mark itself, because the antiquity of the number tells you something important about what is actually unusual here. Records that have stood for more than a century are rare data points in the United States climate record. Most pre-1920 daily high-temperature records have been broken at least once during the modern warming era. The pattern is well documented. Old records fall in clusters during heat events that exceed the local climatology, and the older the record, the rarer it becomes. A standing 1915 record means Denver's May 13th climatology has been remarkably stable across more than a century. The forecast envelope of 89 to 91 degrees places that standing record squarely inside the probabilistic outcome range. The cross-model agreement is the diagnostic. If just one model said it, you would discount the forecast. But the GEFS and the ECMWF, two independent forecast systems, both produce the same outcome. This is also not happening in isolation. This is the second 500-year class early season heat event in the same calendar year. The March 2026 Western U.S. Heat Dome was the first. Per Yale Climate Connections, it qualified as one of the 6 most astonishing extreme weather events of the 21st century. It set a new United States March national temperature record of 112 degrees, exceeding the prior March national record by 4 degrees. It broke more than 7,000 daily records and roughly 2,000 monthly records across 14 states. World Weather Attribution attributed it as virtually impossible without climate change, with a return period exceeding 500 years under a stable climate. That was 6 weeks ago. The May event is producing comparable early season anomalies in different geography. 2 events of this severity, 6 weeks apart, in different regions, is not what you expect from a stationary climate. It is the operational signature of a system that has shifted base state. The migration of the ridge produces a second hazard regime the coastal phase did not produce, and it is the part of the story most viewers have not yet connected to the heat itself. The NWS Bismarck Hazardous Weather Outlook issued at 11:44 UTC this morning states it directly. Quote, "Several days of critical fire weather conditions are possible next week." End quote. That phrasing, "several days," is operationally significant. Single-day red flag warnings are routine across the western United States. They are issued, they expire, fire crews respond, and the regime moves on. Multi-day critical fire weather regimes are when fires get away from suppression. They are the configurations in which a small ignition becomes a large acreage event, because the conditions for rapid spread persist long enough that suppression resources cannot get ahead of the fire perimeter. 2 red flag warnings are already active today across the area Bismarck is flagging. The first was issued by NWS Bismarck for parts of Divide, Burke, Renville, Williams, Mountrail, and Ward counties in northwest North Dakota. Northwest winds increasing to around 20 miles per hour with gusts near 30. The second was issued by NWS Grand Junction for the Little Snake fire weather zone in northwest Colorado. Northwest winds 15 to 25 miles per hour with gusts to 35. Relative humidity 11 to 16%. The NWS impact statement included with the warning reads, quote, "Fires will catch and spread quickly. Exercise extreme caution with any outdoor burning." End quote. The plains in early May are still in the cured grass window. Winter-killed dry fuels have not yet greened up because the spring green-up has not yet established at the latitude of North Dakota and northern Colorado. The combination of heat, low humidity, wind, and abundant dry fuel is the textbook critical fire weather environment, and it is forecast to persist for several days beginning early next week. The Front Range gets its share Monday. NWS Denver flags Monday as an elevated to critical fire weather day with relative humidity in the low teens and gusts 25 to 30 miles per hour. That is the configuration. Now I want to show you what the same configuration has produced before, because the reference class is what makes this forecast operationally serious. 4 events in the last 6 years define what several days of critical fire weather across the plains means in practice. The first is the Smokehouse Creek Fire. It ignited in the Texas Panhandle on February 26, 2024. It burned 1,074,000 acres total, making it the largest wildfire in Texas state history and the second largest wildfire in United States history. 2 people were killed, Joyce Blankenship of Stinnett, Texas, and Cindy Owens of Amarillo. An estimated 15,000 cattle died. The fire grew to 500,000 acres within 12 hours of ignition, with winds exceeding 60 miles per hour, fanning it eastward. The driver was a critical fire weather environment of high winds, low humidity, and abundant cured grass fuel, precisely the configuration the May 2026 forecast places over the plains for several days, starting early next week. The second is the Marshall Fire. It struck Boulder County, Colorado on December 30th, 2021. Driven by 110 mile per hour winds, It destroyed 1,084 homes plus 7 commercial structures in approximately 12 hours. 2 people were killed. Damage totaled more than $2 billion. Arvada recorded a 115-mile-per-hour gust at 12:06 p.m. The Marshall Fire is the single most destructive wildfire in Colorado history by structures lost. There is one detail about the Marshall Fire that is operationally important for what is forecast for Denver this Monday. No red flag warning had been issued the day of the Marshall Fire because the relative humidity of 20 to 25% was above the then active threshold of 15%. The lack of a warning has since prompted the National Weather Service to revise red flag criteria for the Front Range. The point is, even without a red flag warning, sustained high winds and modest low humidity conditions on the Front Range produced the most destructive wildfire event in Colorado state history. The Monday forecast for Denver, relative humidity in the low teens, gusts to 30 miles per hour, is operationally similar. The third event is the Cameron Peak Fire. It ignited in Larimer County, Colorado on August 13th, 2020, and burned 208,913 acres over 112 days. The first wildfire in Colorado's recorded history to exceed 200,000 acres. The 2020 Western Colorado fire season produced 3 of the 4 largest fires in Colorado history within a single calendar year, a clustering pattern that occurred under sustained heat dome conditions, with persistent ridging over the Intermountain West, the same kind of ridging that is forecast for the next 2 weeks. The fourth event is North Dakota on October 5th, 2024. During a single high wind event, multiple fires ignited and burned a combined nearly 120,000 acres. 2 people were killed, including 26-year-old Johannes Nicholas van Eden of South Africa. 8 others were injured. The synoptic environment was diagnostic for what the forecast describes for next week. Humidity values dropped into the teens, and winds gusted over 70 miles per hour. The North Dakota Department of Emergency Services described the fires as some of the worst in North Dakota's history. The cluster occurred in exactly the geography NWS Bismarck is now flagging. So when the forecast reads, several days of critical fire weather across the northern plains, what that translates to in the recent reference class is the same conditions that produced the second largest American wildfire in history, the most destructive Colorado fire on record, the largest Colorado wildfire by acreage, and the worst single fire event in modern North Dakota history. All 4 occurred within the past 6 years. The heat itself is the other half of the story, and the recent reference class is just as serious. The desert southwest exposure window puts roughly 450,000 California residents in the extreme heat watch zone for 60 hours, plus several million in the Phoenix metropolitan area. To understand what that level of exposure does to a population in operational reality, the most relevant analog is the 2023 Maricopa County summer. The Maricopa County Department of Public Health published its 2023 heat-related deaths report. Heat killed 645 people in Maricopa County in 2023. That number exceeded the prior 2022 record of 425 deaths by more than 50%, and it marked the 7th consecutive record-setting year. The trajectory is almost vertical. 252 deaths in 2020, 339 in 2021, 425 in 2022, 645 in 2023. From July 1st through July 29th, 2023, an excessive heat warning was issued every single day. Daily temperatures did not fall below 91 degrees from July 10th through July 25th. 303 of the 645 total deaths occurred in that 2-week window. Among indoor deaths where an air conditioning unit was present, the unit was non-functioning in 85% of cases. The early season character of the May 2026 event amplifies the per capita risk. Cooling infrastructure historically activated for the Phoenix summer is not yet fully spun up. Acclimatization in the population is also lower. Bodies have not yet adjusted physiologically to sustained extreme heat, which raises mortality risk for any given temperature. The historical analog at the migrating ridge scale is the 1936 North American heatwave. Per the U.S. Department of Commerce's mortality statistics for 1936, that event caused 4,678 documented heat-related deaths in the United States, a more than six-fold year-over-year increase. 13 state record high temperatures set in 1936 still stand today. On July 6, 1936, Steele, North Dakota, hit 121 degrees, the highest temperature ever recorded in that state, a record that has now held for 90 years. The 1936 event was driven by a persistent western ridge that migrated east and stagnated over the central United States. That is the same structural pattern the current trajectory shares. The two events differ in their antecedent conditions. 1936 followed a multi-year severe drought, while the northern plains in May 2026 has near normal to surplus soil moisture. How a 1936 pattern interacts with non-1936 surface conditions is an open question that the next 10 days will start to answer. The question for the next week is not whether the heat is real. It is whether the human cost trajectory of the 2023 Phoenix summer plays out across a much wider geographic footprint with much less institutional preparation against an early season acclimatization deficit the population has not had time to close. I want to come back to the Denver record because the antiquity of the number has the largest implication beyond the next 10 days. The fact that the 1915 record has held for 111 years means Denver's local climatology has been remarkably stable for most of the modern era. If the forecast verifies on Wednesday, that stability ends. The standing daily record list at major American cities is the public's most accessible mental model for whether weather is normal. When a record set in 1915 falls during an early May event in 2026, that mental model no longer holds. And this is happening before the formal Super El Niño trigger has been pulled. The Oceanic Niño Index crossed zero from negative to positive during the February, March, April 2026 season. Multi-model December 2026 ENSO median forecast is plus 2.9 degrees Celsius. That value would exceed every modern El Niño peak on record. The 2015-16 peak of plus 2.6, the 1997-98 peak of plus 2.4, and the 1982-83 peak of plus 2.2. Equatorial Pacific subsurface heat content for April 2026 was the highest for any April in the 1979 to present satellite era. The system is producing 500-year class compound events right now with the underlying base state warming and record subsurface heat content already in place, but with the formal trigger still unpulled. What gets layered on top when it does pull is the question the next 18 months will answer. Here is what to watch over the next 10 days, in order of immediacy. Tomorrow, Sunday, May 10th, watch the Mother's Day Texas Severe Weather Event, the Storm Prediction Center. Enhanced risk verification is the first observable. Watch for tornado reports, hail above 2 inches in diameter, and wind reports above 70 miles per hour in the corridor from Snyder through Dallas-Fort Worth and down to Waco. Monday and Tuesday, watch for fire ignitions in the area NWS Bismarck has flagged for several days of critical fire weather. That includes the Divide, Burke, Renville, Williams, Mount Rail, and Ward counties in northwest North Dakota, plus the Front Range from the Wyoming border down through northern Colorado. Watch for any fast-moving large acreage event in the first 48 to 72 hours of the regime. fires that ignite under the early hours of a multi-day critical fire weather window are the ones that grow into reference class events. Wednesday, May 13th, is the central observable for this entire forecast. Watch the Denver high. Does the forecast envelope of 89 to 91 degrees verify? Does the 1915 record fall, tie, or hold? If it falls, that is the first century-old American daily high record to fall during this event. Thursday and Friday, May 14th and 15th, watch the central United States for the WPC record-breaking high temperatures verification. Multiple stations across Kansas, Nebraska, the Dakotas, and Iowa will be in the firing line. The May 18th through May 23rd. Forward look window is the next major event after this regime. Multiple troughs ejecting from the Rockies are forecast to produce a possible larger severe weather outbreak across the plains, the Midwest, and the Ohio Valley. The closing point on all of this is straightforward. The next 5 days are not the end of the regime. They are one chapter in a pattern that has been building since March. The fact that the system is producing 500-year class compound events without the formal Super El Niño trigger having been pulled is the diagnostic. The trigger is forecast to pull in the second half of 2026 and into 2027. What the United States looks like when that happens is the question we are about to find out. We will be tracking this as it develops.